Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first episode here, Opening Arguments presented by Conduct Detrimental. I'll be your host, Conlan Farrell. And today I got Pocket Aces, the Dans, the co-host of the podcast Conduct Detrimental, the number one sports law podcast out there. Joining me now, Dan Wallach and Mr. Dan Lust. Gentlemen, how are we?
We're
doing
good.
great, Colin.
You did an amazing job with the studio over here.
Listen, I tell you what, a lot of people doubt me because I'm wearing the white Sanchez jersey, Mark Sanchez, a little tribute to my Jets. But hey, got things done right, and we're excited. I'm very excited to have both you guys on here. We're gonna have a debate style show. Each of you is going to be given a topic. You're also both going to have a minute to make opening statements. After that, we'll have rebuttal, reply, and then, hey, listen, I'm the one with the squeaky gavel, so I'll be the one awarding a point to one of you gentlemen. And then we'll go from there. But I'm really excited. The first of its kind, our video show here, engaging our viewers. So let's get it rolling, boys. I think we need to start here and with the NFL. Deshaun Watson, right? Deshaun Watson is a hot topic around the league. He has yet to put on a different uniform. He's yet to be moved from Houston. As you can see here, what are we thinking? Do we think Deshaun Watson ends up in another uniform next year? And how many games does he play? Dan Lust, I'm going to toss it to you first. Where are we going? Does Deshaun Watson end up somewhere else next season?
So I've been pretty clear on this one. If I'm a general manager of an NFL team, I'm not touching the guy, right? Somebody else can make a trade for him at this point. I don't really think the juice is worth the squeeze, so to speak. So, I mean, you ask me, I'm not sure Deshaun Watson is going to be playing in the upcoming season. So if you put that over at 6.5, I mean, you maybe could have put it at a half. And I'd still be inclined to take the under. The guy didn't play all of last year. And keep in mind, a suspension has not yet happened. So go back maybe 5-10 years at this point. Ben Roethlisberger had these own charges. No criminal charges resulted, but he was suspended for 10 games. So I don't think we're going to get clarity on this. I think April 1st is the date we're looking at potential criminal charges. But guys, the suspension could be looming as well. So at the end of the day, I'm going to go under here. I don't know if he's going to get traded, not traded, but I feel pretty confident in the under in this one. I'm slamming it. If I'm at a sports book, I'll take the under.
All right. That minute is up now. Dan Wallach, you, sir. The bet is to you.
Thanks, Colin. Well, I go back to the expression, fortune favors the bold. Have you taken a look at the rosters around the National Football League and who's playing the quarterback position? At best, there are maybe 8 to 10 what I would consider franchise-type quarterbacks in the National Football League. There are teams like the Carolina Panthers rolling out quarterbacks like Sam Darnold. And it just go up and down the league. There's mediocrity throughout the NFL. And the NFL may have 32 teams, but only 8 are legitimately in the Super Bowl hunt. If he can avoid the criminal charges, I think there's a high likelihood that he's going to be playing in the 2022 regular season. And I don't see how a suspension, if it's just based on the civil allegations, can be any greater than 6 to 8 games. And I think it's worth a shot. You got to go for the glory here. I mean, NFL executive positions turn over too constantly. This is the chance to just go for it. And he's worth it, a top 5 quarterback.
Dan Lust, to you.
This is a pretty easy one, Dan. I'm not questioning Deshaun Watson's talent. Certainly fortune favors the bold, but at a certain point, if the guy's not going to be playing, right, and he just went through the whole last season, there was no criminal charges. He didn't play. There was no suspension, no nothing. So I just don't think the risk is worth it. And I can't imagine, hey, Deshaun Watson's going to be back week 10. Let's get him ready to go, right? I just don't see that happening. I don't know what team takes a chance on it that hasn't taken one already. Carolina was supposed to make a deal. Denver, Tampa, all these teams need quarterbacks. But if I'm the general manager of that team and I trade for Deshaun Watson and the guy gets sent to prison, right? We're all talking about these criminal charges. I mean, that's terrible on my resume. So I'm not ready to take that risk. I'm not going to do it.
All right. And Dan Wallach, your final counter.
Well, I mean, let's take a look at the reality, what the world will look like if he's not charged criminally. Then it becomes, do the civil allegations rise to the level of a suspensible offense? The NFL will do its investigation. But bear in mind here, he's already served a full season on the sidelines. He's been inactive, levied basically a de facto suspension for 17 weeks. And I think the NFL needs to take that into account, because under the NFL's collective bargaining agreement, there is a restriction on double penalties. If he's already been penalized by the Houston Texans, and the NFL tries to levy another lengthy suspension on top of that, I think you're going to see arbitration over this issue and potentially resort to the courts. Civil allegations, he's going to be able to come back from that. And I would take the risk if I'm an NFL general manager. Once the criminal is out of the way, that's a statement.
I am waving my
30 seconds.
I am waving my rubber hammer.
Wait. If there's no criminal,
there's 30 seconds. I gotta be hard. Zen,
hit the buzzer.
Don't you watch the presidential debates?
Yeah,
exactly. And those lasted forever. Jeez.
Yeah.
And so that's where I have to cut you off. I'm waving the squeaky hammer, and a decision has been rendered. But Mr. Wallach, you'll like the outcome. I award the point to you. I don't think there's a way that Deshaun Watson doesn't start week 1 for another NFL franchise. No, it won't be in Houston, but I do find a way that the deal does get done. I really think that Carolina might be his landing spot. Obviously, Miami was suitors. They were in the running last year. We thought a deal might get done. It did not, but I do think Deshaun Watson steps on the field week 1 next year. That'll be my bold prediction. Okay. Now we move forward. Obviously, we're going to stay in the NFL on our all gridiron episode 1 of Opening Arguments. Another bombshell that happened right as February began this month. Brian Flores, the former Dolphins head coach, levying a lawsuit against the league and several of its teams. He's now been hired, though, in Pittsburgh. He is hired as a senior defensive assistant and linebackers coach. Guys, Brian Flores, obviously, his tenure in Miami wasn't stellar, but it certainly didn't look to me as deserving to be fired. And that's kind of where he went with his lawsuit. Does Brian Flores coach again? The over-under number of years until he's a head coach again is 2.5. Who's taking that over? Mr. Wallach, you hold serve here, so I'm going to go to you. Over under 2.5 years until until Brian Flores, rather, is a head coach in the NFL again.
In my view, it's definitely going to be under. And just look at the state of affairs pre-filing of the lawsuit and post-filing of the lawsuit. On January 31st, the NFL had 1 black head coach. Mm-hmm. Within 2 weeks after Brian Flores filing his lawsuit, 3 black head coaches, Houston and Miami. And what's going to be very important is that there are going to be incentives. But besides, Brian Flores is a top-level coach. He's going to prove himself in Pittsburgh. He's going to do a very good job under Mike Tomlin. But again, I expect there at some point to be a global settlement in his litigation under which there are going to be draft pick incentives attached to the hiring of black coaches. You have to remember, he's a damn good head coach. His record speaks for itself. And there eventually will be a global settlement and some compromise where teams are going to be incentivized to hire black head coaches in the form of draft picks. And you have to remember, he set historic precedent, and he's going to be so incredibly popular among players. Free agent recruiting, definitely the under.
All right, the under by Mr. Wallach. Dan Lust, your counter.
So I guess, first and foremost, Brian Flores is a fantastic head coach. I don't think anyone is questioning that. The question is whether suing the NFL gives you a right, gives you the ability to play in the NFL or coach in the NFL. 10-6, 9-8. Flores has a winning record his last 2 seasons as a head coach. But the question is whether a team is going to take a chance on him to be their head coach. So I certainly think Flores has a future in the NFL. He's back on the Steelers staff already. I don't think necessarily anybody expected him to be back in the NFL, this quickly. Maybe some did, but when you sue all 32 NFL teams, I think you take the risk that maybe you're not going to get the helm again. So Mike Tomlin put him on his staff, maybe the most overqualified linebackers coach in the history of the NFL. I think that senior defensive assistant label is usually one given to a head coach in waiting. I just don't think, right, the life of this lawsuit, we know litigation really well. This class action lawsuit, racial discrimination, could go on for 2.5, 3 years. So I think that line is right. I'm going to take the over, though.
All right, Dan Wallach, 30 seconds.
Sure. One of the tried and true litigation tactics among class action defense counsel is the strategy known as picking off a class representative. If Brian Flores is hired as a head coach by an NFL team, he can no longer serve as his lawsuit goes away pretty much, and he cannot be a class representative if he's a current NFL head coach. It happens time and time again in class action litigation to go after the head coach or go after the class representative. And as a qualified head coaching candidate, there's a lot of upside in hiring them. And then you get the fringe benefit of being able to neutralize the litigation by picking off the class rep. And this has happened before, with Michael Sam and the NFL teams stepping up and doing a league a favor.
I'm blowing the whistle. Wallach doesn't believe in the neon numbers. He sees right through them. I give him credit. For the confidence. Dan Lust, you have 30 seconds. Make your final point.
You can give him 35.
Give him 30. I'll spot him 5.
Let's start the clock here. If Dan doesn't get deducted for going over again, this point has to be mine. But neither here nor there. I've used my 5 seconds appropriately. So I mean, at the end of the day, right? Brian Flores filed this lawsuit knowing, and he said, I might never coach again in the NFL, but this lawsuit is more important, than maybe myself, right, as an NFL head coach. So I think he bides his time. I think he comes back. Dan, your point is well made that, change is already happening. But, Lovie Smith is the head coach of the Houston Texans, not Brian Flores, right? So maybe there's a tax to filing that lawsuit that you have to now go back to the end of the line. Not that I agree with it, but Colin Kaepernick, again, never returned to the NFL after that lawsuit. Kurt Flood never played again. So, all right. I'm gonna go with my gut here.
We're gonna rest your cases. All right, and I will give Mr. Lust after the Wallach time lapse. We're gonna give the point here to Dan Lust. I agree. As we've seen in these multiple lawsuits that have come out, litigation the NFL's had to deal with, at the end of the day, the NFL owners obviously are not going to take too kindly to being sued, obviously, by one of their former head coaches. I still think he is a excellent and well-deserving candidate to be a head coach somewhere. I just think he's going to kind of have to pay his dues now once again. So I think it'll be a little while before Brian Flores. I don't think he won't become another one, but I think it'll be a few years before he takes the helm in a new NFL city. So with that being said, we go to the rubber match. Our final topic on this first episode of Opening Arguments, brought to you by Conduct Detrimental, the leader in sports law coverage. All right, Dan Snyder and the Washington Commanders. Will the NFL forcibly remove Dan Snyder as an owner? We have the line set here at minus 500. It's never been done before. Dan Lust, to you, sir.
Okay. I'm going to say, listen, I'm all for, trying to push Snyder out if he does bad stuff, right? Sexual assault allegations, sexual harassment allegations, toxic workplace, right? At a certain point, I made the joke on the podcast, but it's sports law bingo. Dan Snyder and his Washington NFL team, Redskins, Commanders, whatever you want to call it, they've done everything wrong, right? And they've even maybe sullied the name of Sean Taylor to try to get some good PR in the middle of this firestorm. I think if anyone is deserving to lose their team, it's Dan Snyder, just from decades worth of misconduct, especially sexual assault, sexual harassment allegations. But you asked me what I think is going to happen. Roger Goodell and the NFL owners sweep this under the rug constantly, and it's no stranger with Dan Snyder. They pretended to do an independent investigation, actually hired a lawyer to defend them for a preemptive litigation claim. So minus 500 is a lot. I don't think it's going to happen. I want it to. I don't think it's going to happen, guys. You asked me, I'm a betting man. I don't see it happening.
Dan Wallach, your thoughts?
Well, I believe the walls are closing in on Daniel Snyder. The NFL's attempt to cover up his misdeeds has met an immovable force, and that immovable force is Congress, which has this broad investigative and subpoena power. The truth will eventually come out. The report will eventually come out, and Congress has a lot of weapons at its disposal to force the NFL to talk and to force these admissions and the Wilkinson report to be aired out and to receive a public disclosure. And once that's out, it's going to be curtains for Dan Snyder and Congress's weapons here. And they're already starting to hint at repealing the exemption, antitrust exemption for the Sports Broadcasting Act, maybe repealing laws on tax breaks. Snyder's eventually going to become collateral damage because Congress can bring in the Dallas Cowboys cheerleader lawsuit within the scope of its investigation. He's disposable baggage. He's going to be gone in 2 years.
All righty, Dan Lust, your next point.
So I think, Mr. Wallach, you missed the call to the question. The question was, will the NFL force Dan Snyder to sell his team? That has never happened. It's unprecedented in the NFL, unprecedented in sports. Not even, Donald Sterling, the NBA didn't force him to sell it, right? Even Marge Schott, she voluntarily sold it. it's very possible that the walls come in like with Jerry Richardson, and then Dan Snyder makes the decision on his own to sell because, right, Mr. Green talks could be a $3 billion sale, $4 billion sale in a major media market like DC. Will Dan Snyder be the first guy who's so pig-headed that the NFL forces him to sell? Possible, but unlikely. I just don't think the NFL is going to end up doing it.
Dan Wallach, close us out.
I'll answer your question much more explicitly. The NFL will force Dan Snyder to sell because the bar is very low under the Constitution and bylaws of the league. If he's found to have committed conduct detrimental to the game of football, to the NFL and the game of football,
awesome.
All it's going to take is a 3/4 vote of the remaining owners to displace him as owner. And these sexual assault allegations, making the unwanted sexual advances, the hand on a thigh, pushing Tiffany Johnston towards the limo, that in and of itself is conduct detrimental to the NFL, and that will be his demise.
All righty, and that rounds it out. I love the plugs thrown out by Mr. Wallach. There are multiple conduct detrimental references, but a decision must be rendered, and I have to say I side here with the favorite. I do not believe that the NFL will forcibly remove Dan Snyder. Hasn't been done before. While some great points made, though, especially with Congress now involved. But for this time being, I do not see Dan Snyder having to be removed by the league itself. Who knows? There's certainly more to come with that. I think the report that they didn't release the full findings of back in the summer was a sham. So who knows? Maybe they do find something that they're looking for that will finally oust him down there in Washington, D.C. But that'll wrap up episode 1 of Opening Arguments. Gentlemen, I thank you both for joining me. Something different, something new, I think, to give our audience a visual. I think it's really, really something that'll help further engage our broadening, our ever-expanding niche in sports law. Guys, thanks so much. Any final thoughts? Oh, that's right. That's right. What are we talking about? We need some FaceTime for Mr. Lust. Go ahead.
Conlan,
with your bad self.
This is a shout out to you. Great form over here. Dan, I actually bought your argument. I'd probably take it at plus 500, and I'm rooting for it. But at the end of the day, Conlan, this is a great forum that you've set up over here, and we're lucky that we're doing this. So I think once a week, Conlan, we'll be back here. Maybe Dan and I, maybe some other duos of conduct detrimental, but some lawyers. And Conlan, you served as a fantastic ref. Maybe we'll even get you a real gavel instead of that dog squeak toy over there.
Yeah, a little squeak toy, exactly. Well, guys, it's been great. It's been fun.
Sports law history in the making. I think there's never been a
debate
show in the history of sports law commentary. No one's ever done it. This is going to take off. Great first episode, Conlan. Dan, fantastic job. Let's keep rolling with it. This is a strong first week, though. I hope we have topics like this from week to week. It doesn't get any better than Dan Snyder, Brian Flores, and Deshaun Watson. That's like the Hall of Fame of NFL legal controversies.
Well, exactly. As long as people keep making bad decisions, we'll be here to talk about it. Guys, thanks again so much. And for everyone out there, thank you guys for tuning in. Opening Arguments, episode 1 for Conduct Detrimental. I'm Conlan Farrell.